Cause, action pending, summon.
Mubarak graduated in 2018.
Okay.
19, yeah.
And directing your attention to January 15, 2020, a couple of years later, how old was your son?
Was 19 years old.
All right. And before he graduated from Notre Dame High School in Fairfield, where did he go to school?
Mubarak started high school in Norwalk. Norwalk High School for 1 year, and then we moved.
And did Mubarak have friends in Norwalk, people he knew?
Oh my God, plenty. He had plenty of friends. He was really well known in Norwalk, and he was always there.
Okay. And were you aware of the fact that your brother had some issues with, had a mental health condition?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was amongst the people that he called the summer of 2016, just in a state of confusion and unaware what was taking place or what was going on. I'm very paranoid, and we just had no idea what was going on until we did. Like, when we took him to the hospital and they were able to give us more insight into his psychosis.
Okay. And did he have a diagnosis?
Yeah, they diagnosed him with schizophrenia and bipolar.
Okay. And he received some medication for that?
Yes.
All right. But on a day-to-day basis, I know he had that medication, I know he had the
Right.
diagnosis. Was he able to function?
With the medication?
Yeah.
They would, prescribe him a concoction of medication, and he would be stable for some time. And then, as we learned as a family, sometimes they feel like they're okay on the medication, and so there's times where they just are not taking it as consistently, and that would be the case with Mubarak. So we would be kind of in and out of the ER. Unfortunately, when the manic episodes arose, and it was just a constant readjustment of medication and best efforts to get him to take it consistently.
Right. But he was a varsity basketball player, right?
Right. Yeah. They went to they were very successful as a team, and he tried everything: basketball, lacrosse. He even did some football as well.
And he graduated high school.
Yes, he graduated high school.
So on January 15, 2020, where were you?
I was in Malaysia. I received a Fulbright, so I was in Malaysia on that fellowship teaching English.
So you were received a Fulbright scholarship from the college you graduated from?
Yeah, I received it from the United States government.
Okay, from the U.S. government.
Right.
And to do what? What were you doing in Malaysia?
I was an ETA, so English teaching assistant. So I was placed in a school in Malaysia to teach English.
Okay. When was the last time you spoke to your brother Mubarak?
I spoke to him that week before he passed, and I can tell, by just speaking to him, he was pretty erratic. He was definitely experiencing a mania, and I was someone who he often called when he was in that state, and I would just talk to him very thoughtfully and trying to kind of bring him down and calm him down.
Okay. And how did you learn of your brother's death?
I was very publicly at a location in Malaysia, and my brother called, and yeah, he was just very distraught and bawling, and he finally said, Mubarak died, and yeah, that was pretty intense.
This was your brother Saeed?
Yes.
Okay. All right. No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Riccio.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
May I call you Mr. Woolman?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Now, you had testified that, and I'm going to assume on multiple occasions, your brother had manic episodes.
Right.
If you were to put a number on it, how many times would you say he had these manic episodes?
I could provide like a range, like maybe like 7 to like 7
Can
to
you speak up, please, ma'am? I can't hear you.
7 to 15, like a range. If I was to provide, I wouldn't be able to give you an exact number.
Thank you, as best you can. Thank you. Now, when these episodes occurred, did he go to the hospital each time?
Yeah, we would ensure that he was, taken to the hospital
Okay.
to be reviewed.
And what was the
And then I went to the communications division, and we had further information, but ultimately, I maintained that position, that we would not pursue that car.
Okay. Did the dispatcher notify the officers who were pursuing to stop, basically?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you ensure that that was carried out?
We did a roll call on the air, so every unit that was working, you would call them and verify that they got the information or the order to break off the pursuit.
Okay. And were other police departments notified of this pursuit and the fact it was broken off?
The pursuit went out on the hotline, so communications was in charge of that, so there would be numerous other departments that heard it, including the state police. I was not operating the radio. To the best of my knowledge at that point, our communications supervisor, Tina Rawls, was on the phone with the state police. So we put it over the air, I believe, and she told them verbally over the phone. She was in phone contact with them.
Okay. And did you receive any information about how the state police were handling the situation after the pursuit was terminated?
No, I broke it off. We had broken it off, and then I went back down to my office, and that's the last I heard about it until I was notified by another lieutenant that there had been an incident in West Haven.
An officer-involved shooting?
Yes.
Okay. And when you learned there was an officer-involved shooting in West Haven, involving the same vehicle that was the subject of the Norwalk pursuit? Mm-hmm. Yes?
Yes, correct.
What did you do then?
I went back up to the communications room upstairs and called Troop G on the phone to see if I could offer any assistance or if they needed anything, and to kind of ask what happened. And then I sent the sergeant, Sergeant Bisegli, up to West Haven to see if he could offer any assistance to them.
Okay, so we're going to play that call that you made to Troop G now. This is part of Exhibit 7. So a portion of Exhibit 7. So please listen to this, Lieutenant.
Okay.
State Police Bridge 4 dispatch, man. Lieutenant Hume from Norwalk. Yes, sir. So I should talk to, as much as I can piece together here what happened with this whole thing, I should talk to somebody. I don't know if your shift commander's there or...
Yeah, so what happened was, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but what happened was we chased that car down to West Haven.
Yes.
And then the car yeah. So both of our sergeants that work inside are both out at the scene right now.
Well, let me tell you then what we pieced together down here, and you can repeat it if anybody wonders. Sure. So at the AT&T store, which is on Route 7 here next to Town Fair Fire, this guy, the suspect, who is shot now, comes in and he's walking around talking crazy, brandishing a knife. He goes up to one of the girls in there and he says something about they hacked his phone or something, or they deleted his memory or whatever it is. And she says, we can't do that from here. So he's walking around ranting and like with the knife. So the manager comes out of the back and tells him, you gotta leave. So he leaves. And apparently then calls a lift, which I guess comes relatively quickly. He gets into the back of the lift. and the guy drives down to, I'm thinking it's the Shell station on Broad Street in Norwalk, with the suspect in the back seat all the while hitting the driver in the back of the head. So the guy pulls into the gas station and says, "That's it, get out. I've got a gun." This is the Lyft driver. "I've got a gun. Get out of the cab." So the guy gets out of the cab, and as they're standing there, the guy jumps in, or the Lyft.
Yep.
The suspect jumps into it and drives away in it.
Okay.
So that's what we have here. And when we kind of got most of this together, it's looking like the sergeant on the scene said it is not a carjacking. So that's when we broke it off and let everybody know the latest we have is not a carjacking.
Okay.
And then the last week, somebody up here talked to one of you guys. You weren't pursuing him anymore. You were monitoring on the cameras. You could exit 34.
Yeah, because one of the dispatchers called back and said that it was being considered a carjacking at the moment.
Yeah, it was back and forth. The last thing we said was not. Frankly, was it or wasn't it? It's a big mess. Did he say to the Uber driver? We have the Lyft driver. Did he brandish the knife and push him in? Well, then technically it's carjacking.
Yeah.
But the last I had from the sergeant on the scene, it was not. He just jumped in the car and drove it away.
Okay.
So we'll say. So what happened to the scene? So they stopped him, obviously, and he came at them like or something?
Yeah, I don't think he stopped. They got off of 43 in West Haven. If you're familiar with 43 in West Haven, it's a very steep ramp. And so he took the left to go underneath the highway. And I don't know if he lost it or he struck something coming off the ramp, but that's when we lost communication with the troopers for a few minutes, and then they came over and there were shots fired. So.
Okay. I have a sergeant going up there from here now, and then we are out here at the scene. So let me give, whoever needs it, let me give you my phone number.
Sure. Yeah.
It's 203-246-7687, and it's Lieutenant Hume, H-U-M-E.
All right, so I'll pass your information on. I appreciate it. And you said you did have a sergeant going up to 43, right?
Yeah, we have somebody going up there. Yeah.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
Just in the shed lead.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Great. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
So do you remember that phone call?
Yes, I do.
So about in the middle of that phone call, the Troop G dispatcher says, somebody from Norwalk called Troop G after you had terminated the pursuit and said it was being investigated as a carjacking. Were you aware of that?
I had no knowledge of that, no, until you actually told me in the office.
Okay. But you heard that on the phone call?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And so from your perspective, there was this incident at the AT&T store. It goes down to the Shell station. You saw the video of what happened in the Shell station. The officers, Norwalk officers agreed it wasn't a carjacking and stopped the pursuit. But then somehow this information gets relayed to Troop G incorrectly. Fair to say?
Apparently, I'm guessing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And then what further involvement did you have in this case, sir?
I mean, that was it, pretty much. I had guys go back to the AT&T store. There had been an incident earlier at LA Fitness. We had somebody head up there. It was just kind of pulling it all together, what had happened. Right, okay. Which is hard to do when it's happening.
Sure, sure. But I guess, were you aware of the fact that the officer-involved shooting resulted in a death? Were you aware of that?
At that point, I don't think so.
Okay, just a shooting had happened at exit 43.
Right.
All right, great. No further questions. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name's Frank Riccio. We've never met before.
No.
I represent Trooper North. So, timing is a funny thing, isn't it? In this particular case, we have a fluid series of events, correct?
Correct.
And my best estimate, and I'm going to ask you to comment on this, is that there were almost like competing messages being sent to the troopers, to Troop G. Is that fair to say?
That may be. It's actually hard for me to say because I wasn't communicating with them until after it occurred.
Fair enough. In fact, I think
I was getting all kinds of information though, so.
right.
Yeah.
And we just heard your communication, which, if my notes are correct, was around 5:20 p.m.
Yeah.
But whatever the time was, that's what.
Okay.
That's the extent of your communication. Now, you called off the pursuit in Norwalk, correct? And this is primarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, primarily based upon the fact that it was, at that time, a stolen car without any violence alleged, correct?
That's what it appeared to be at that point, yes.
And I'm sure other factors that worked into that was the traffic conditions. This was rush hour. Wednesday afternoon, 4:30. So traffic conditions, the speed of the suspect vehicle, and those types of things, correct?
Correct.
Now, approximately 10 or so minutes after, were you aware that approximately 10 or so minutes after you called off your pursuit, Troop G is sending out a bulletin saying that this was a carjacking, the suspect had a knife?
No, I was not aware of that.
Okay. Just give me 1 second. With the assistance of Attorney Slitt, I'm going to ask you to listen to 2 very brief recordings that represent 2 calls that dispatch sent out around 4:50 p.m.
Okay.
And ask you, after you hear these 2 recordings, to ask you some questions based on those. Please.
The vehicle, let them know.
Please switch forward to special events.
Okay, dispatch van 10, I get a call from Norwalk.
Yes.
The officer that's on the highway or near the vehicle, let them know there are officers telling us to consider it a felony stop. They're considered a carjacking now.
All right, hold on a second.
Sure.
Okay, we'll pass it on to the troopers.
Hey,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Troop G 1422 Just took a call from Norwalk PD. The officers that are investigating are stating that this is now a carjacking incident. Proceed caution. The individual did have a knife. Over 226, send over.
Having now heard those 2 recordings, can you agree that communications went over the radio that on 2 different occasions a report of carjacking, suspect has a knife, was sent out?
Yes.
And these communications were 10 minutes or so after you terminated the pursuit in Norwalk. Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't.
Now, the recording that we first heard of you communicating with Troop G was at about 5:20 p.m. 30 minutes after those 2 recordings were put out over the radio. Were you aware of that 30-minute time differential?
No, I was not. I didn't know those were put out after I broke the pursuit off.
And were you aware that the incident that brings us here took place between the 4:50 p.m. call alleging a carjacking and the 5:20 p.m. call stating this is not a carjacking?
No, I was not aware of that. I don't know the time frame.
So I guess the question is, how was it, withdrawn? We can agree that the 4:50 p.m. communications that we just heard were communications that were not authorized by you, correct?
Correct.
But someone authorized them because they went out over the radio, correct?
Correct. And Tina, who was speaking there, was the communications supervisor. So that would be her.
And as we know, all the communications that are going out over the radio, there are troopers and police officers all relying upon the accuracy of that information, correct?
Correct.
At the conclusion of your statement, and when I say statement, the relatively 3-minute length conversation that you had with Troop G, there was a dialogue with you and Troop G, and I think you said words to the effect of, you know, is this a carjacking? Is this not a carjacking? Yeah, I don't know. It went back and forth.
Correct, it did go back and forth.
Now, can we agree that at least over the radio, it didn't, over the communications that we just heard, it didn't go back and forth? It was, you terminated the pursuit, 11 minutes later, carjacking with a knife.
Sure, I terminated the pursuit, went back down to my office, which isn't in communications, and then apparently, I mean, I don't know the time frame, but that information was put out and I don't know why.
The rules regarding pursuits, generally, I know there's a lot of them, but one of them is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that pursuits are not authorized if you're pursuing a stolen car. Or to say it differently, pursuits are not authorized if there's no threat of violence. Am I oversimplifying it?
Threat of violence, an ongoing dangerous situation. Pursuits of stolen cars, I believe, are illegal now. I used to break them off anyway, even before they were illegal, because it's a property crime.
And was that the status of the law in 2020, January?
I believe that was before it became illegal to chase stolen cars.
Now, notwithstanding that, there was a pursuit by Norwalk from Main Avenue or thereabouts onto Route 7, onto I-95, correct?
I'm not sure how far it went or where he was when he got broken off, but that was the way it went, yes.
Okay. And pursuits are authorized if there's reasonable suspicion that violence just happened, is happening, or is about to happen.
Correct.
And using that status of the law, that's what you use to base your breaking the pursuit off in Norwalk.
Excuse me. Basically, there was also talk of a gun, but the gun apparently was the driver's gun, and that was pretty much what we thought at that point.
Right.
Right.
But you also had a suspect in a stolen car.
Right.
Driving over the speed limit on Route 7, busy road, during rush hour, Wednesday afternoon. That's dangerous too, correct?
Sure.
Moderate traffic, and did you consider the welfare of all of the motorists that may have, God forbid, come into contact with him during the pursuit?
At the point I broke it off?
Before you broke it off, and let me ask you, and I hope I didn't confuse you, in considering whether to break it off, do you consider the public that's at risk where you have a stolen car in a heavily populated area driving fast during rush hour? I mean,
Sure.
Are those considerations too?
No, that's why. That's one of the things you consider, the time of day, the traffic, rush hour, and the danger that it presents to people who are just driving their cars, who are not involved.
But considering that, there was a decision by Norwalk to break it off regardless. Because you broke it off at 4:39.
Sure, I broke it off, but I did not have information that it was definitely, there had been force used or a weapon displayed. It had been displayed earlier, but I didn't, you know, when I got up to communications, it seemed everything was, everyone was talking about the gun, which ended up being the driver's gun. So taking everything into consideration, I thought we're putting more people at risk by chasing this guy. The hope is that maybe he'll just stop or get off, you know, get off and go away, and that'll be the end of it, and we can investigate it, which is always preferable to a pursuit.
This is, I think, a perfect example of a police officer having to make split-second decisions based upon the information you have at the time, correct?
Oh, it absolutely is, and everybody yelling and screaming over the radio at the same time.
Sure, so it doesn't help when you're in a high-tension situation and there's lots of noise and lots of chaos around you.
Oh, no.
To have to make decisions based upon all that chaos.
No.
Correct?
Correct.
It's difficult.
It is very difficult.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks.
You didn't make your decision to shoot your gun that day, did you?
Objection.
Well, you're talking about high-risk, split-second decisions. I
I'll
want to
sustain
distinguish it from
I'll
what...
sustain the objection.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. No further questions.
That'll be stricken, please. I think we're all set. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I think as we go along, this thing is about is making notice. So they'll have to do that's what I'm sort of. Good question.
So I apologize to the court, Your Honor. We have no further evidence to offer today. We're prepared to resume the trial tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Okay, and so.
Perfectly fine.
I thought so. As I had mentioned, usually we'll work until 4:30 or so. I told you this morning, it would probably be more like 4 o'clock today. Sometimes these things happen. It's early in the trial, and we have time to make it up. So I'm going to excuse you for today. As I said before, and you'll get tired of hearing this, but it's very important. I really want you to, don't make up your mind.